Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling a foundational issue in society, one that I think often hides in plain sight. We're talking about the persistent crisis of access to justice across North America. We're diving into a stack of sources, mostly research from the ABA,
Yeah.
looking at this massive unmet need for legal services.
And this is such a critical topic because the sources, they really show that access to the legal system isn't just an inconvenience.
No.
It's a profound systemic failure. I mean, the 2016 ABA Commission on the Future of Legal Services laid it all out. And honestly, the figures are still alarming today.
They really are.
Despite decades of effort, from legal aid, pro bono programs, the vast majority of people, especially those with moderate incomes, are just not getting the legal help they need.
And the scale of this, it's immense. We're not talking about a small gap here. The research shows that over 4/5 of the legal needs of the poor go unmet.
4/5.
But here's the crucial point that I think gets overlooked all the time. The majority of middle-income Americans and Canadians are also struggling.
Exactly. It is not just a poverty issue.
Not at all. It's a mainstream consumer issue.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you define the rule of law as a system where people can reliably, resolve disputes, protect their rights.
Plan for their future.
Right. Then by the ABA's own standards, we are failing most of our population. And that failure, it just creates chaos in everyday life. Everything from housing security to family issues to small business stability.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Our mission for this deep dive is to analyze exactly how this crisis persists and then, explore the disruptive solutions that are finally making some headway.
Yeah.
And specifically, we're looking at legal service plans, the subscription service model from companies like legalShield and how they are directly challenging that old, expensive, traditional legal business model.
That traditional model has become the main choke point. It's too inefficient and way too expensive for the kind of routine legal issues the average person runs into.
So the core question we want to answer for you, the listener, is this. Why would someone who needs legal help, say, for a will, or reviewing a contract, or even a traffic ticket, why would they choose a predictable monthly subscription over the traditional path, paying a huge retainer up front or a single flat fee?
To really get the appeal of the subscription model, you first have to understand why the traditional one is so broken for the average person. The ABA Commission, they highlighted two critical and kind of intertwined barriers.
Okay, what were those two main barriers that stood out in their research? I have to imagine one is money, but what's the other?
You're right on the money, no pun intended. Financial cost is number one. It is cited as the single most common factor for not seeking legal services, period.
Right.
But it's a little nuanced. It's often not just the actual cost, but the perception and, more importantly, the uncertainty of the cost that makes people just back away. They hear billable hour and they panic.
That makes total sense. If you have $500 and that gets your car fixed, you might do it. But if that same $500 only buys you 1 hour of a lawyer's time, and you have no idea if your issue will take 1 hour or 20,
you do nothing.
You put it on the shelf.
Yeah, exactly. That fear of the unknown cost is completely debilitating. And that brings us right to the second barrier, a profound lack of knowledge. You could almost call it legal illiteracy.
Okay.
People often don't even recognize that the trouble they're facing, say, a scary letter from a debt collector or a landlord threatening eviction, has a real, available legal solution.
They just see it as a life problem, not a legal problem.
Precisely. And the stats that reflect this paralysis are pretty stark. One key study found that only 15% of people facing a civil justice issue actually sought formal help.
Only 15.
Just 15. A massive 46% tried to deal with it themselves, usually, not very well. And a really worrying 16% did absolutely nothing.
16% were just paralyzed. That is significant. It means for every 6 people facing a majorly stressful issue, one of them just decided to ignore the debt collector or the eviction notice. Because the fear of the legal process, and especially the legal bill, was worse than the immediate problem itself.
And this paralysis is made so much worse by the traditional law practice model. That model is built on this idea of individualized, high-cost, one-on-one lawyering.
And it's almost always based on that billable hour.
almost exclusively.
It almost sounds like a conflict of interest is just baked right into the system.
It is, historically. I mean, if a firm's revenue is fundamentally tied to maximizing the hours they spend on a file, there's just less incentive to invest in systems that make the process more efficient.
Things like flat fee pricing or document automation.
Right, or streamlined online processes.
Yeah.
The billable hour actually constrains the very innovations that would make legal help more affordable and accessible for everyone.
And as we said, the consumer is left holding all the anxiety of that uncertainty. So reducing that price uncertainty, that has to be the key to overcoming this reluctance.
And it is, which is why the market is finally shifting. And that brings us directly to the innovative solution that the ABA Commission studied in depth: prepaid legal services plans, or PPLs, and legal insurance.
Okay.
This model is engineered specifically to tear down those two barriers we talked about: cost uncertainty and lack of knowledge.
So let's get into the mechanics. Why subscribe to one of these plans instead of just hiring a lawyer for a single fixed fee task, like, say, writing a will?
The difference really comes down to risk management and how often you might use it. PPLs operate a lot like insurance, or any subscription service, really. It's built on an actuarial model.
Okay.
Clients pay a small pre-established amount, that monthly fee, and in return, they get guaranteed access to legal services, often at no additional cost for specific things, as long as it's within the plan limits.
This is kind of like a gym membership for your legal health, right?
That is a perfect analogy. Exactly. You pay the flat fee, and whether you go once a month or 5 times, the cost is predictable.
You know what you're paying.
Precisely. That predictability just demolishes the price uncertainty you face when walking into a firm and hearing about a massive retainer. You know your expense up front. But I think the greatest benefit is the psychological shift it creates.
So?
It moves clients from being reactive and defensive to being proactive. We call it proactive law.
That proactive shift seems like the really disruptive part. It actually encourages people to use a lawyer before a small problem becomes a huge crisis.
Absolutely. The ABA strongly recommends this idea of regular legal checkups, just like you'd get a medical checkup.
Right.
And legal insurance and PPLs, they make this possible by giving you easy, low-barrier access to just ask a question. If you know you can call a lawyer on your plan for free to look at that debt collector's letter or review an apartment lease.
You're much more likely to actually do it.
You are. You move from ignoring the problem to neutralizing it before it gets out of hand.
That's so critical, because the traditional model financially punishes you for asking a simple preventative question. But with the subscription, you're encouraged to use the service for small things so they don't become big, expensive things.
And the scope of services under these plans is often targeted right at that preventative level. We're talking about the core legal services every adult needs, but, often puts off.
Like what specifically?
The preparation of a simple will, reviewing simple legal documents like contracts up to a certain number of pages, and even having a lawyer make short phone calls or send letters on your behalf to an adverse party.
That last one is huge. I mean, a single short professional letter from an attorney can often just shut down a minor dispute, a fight with a neighbor, a small collection issue, before it ever escalates into something that costs thousands in litigation.
It's the deterrent factor. And PPLs provide a really efficient way of matching clients with lawyers. These services have panels of qualified attorneys, so when you call, you get connected with someone who has the right skills for your issue.
I do have to ask, though, just playing devil's advocate, does this not risk diminishing the quality of the legal work? Are these lawyers just, churning through calls?
That's a fair question, and the sources actually address the incentive for the lawyers. This model is highly beneficial for them, too. They get a massive, consistent stream of new clients through the plan.
So it's a client acquisition tool for them.
A very efficient one, yeah. Often for routine, high-volume tasks. But the source material also notes that these clients often return to that same lawyer for more complex services that aren't covered under the plan, like litigation or forming a business, which are then billed at the lawyer's normal rate.
So the plan acts as the initial low-cost marketing and intake, getting clients in the door. That makes sense why so many lawyers are turning to PPLs to supplement their practices.
Precisely. It's a win-win. Predictable clients for the lawyer, predictable costs for the consumer.
This really shows that prepaid legal services aren't just a one-off idea. They're part of a massive systemic market correction that's happening in the legal industry, and it's all being driven by client demand for predictability.
That is the key context. The shift away from the billable hour toward models like PPLs is just one piece of a much wider disruption. We're seeing major trends across the whole legal sector that prove the market just won't tolerate the old model anymore.
How widespread is this move toward predictability?
Oh, it's pervasive, even at the highest levels of corporate law. The sources note that the billable hour is shrinking, especially for big corporate clients who demand budget certainty.
Really?
Yeah, 93% of large and mid-sized firms reported using what they call alternative fee arrangements, or AFAs, things like fixed pricing or flat fees, because their clients simply refuse to pay for open-ended hourly billing anymore.
So clients are basically voting with their wallets and forcing the legal industry to catch up to how almost every other professional service, from accounting to IT, already works.
Exactly. And alongside AFAs, we're seeing the rise of new providers of legal services. These aren't just law firms, they're legal tech companies, document services, all offering alternative. The online legal services industry was valued at around $4.1 billion way back in 2014.
$4 billion a decade ago.
And that growth has only accelerated. That's all driven by consumer demand that traditional law firms just fail to meet affordably.
And technology must be just pouring fuel on this fire, right?
Yeah.
Attacking the routine parts of legal work.
Absolutely. Think about two core concepts here, unbundling and advanced tech. Unbundling, or what's called limited scope representation, is basically breaking legal work down into specific, discrete tasks.
Could you give an example of what that looks like for a consumer?
Sure. So instead of hiring a lawyer for a full, expensive divorce case, a client might only hire them to draft the initial petition and then later to review the final agreement.
And the client handles the stuff in between themselves.
Right, like mediation and court filings. They purchase only the specific, discrete service they need, avoiding the cost of full representation when they don't need it. It's huge for clients financially, and it helps the courts by having fewer truly unrepresented people.
That provides critical access for people who can afford some legal help, just not the whole comprehensive package.
And technology just accelerates all of that. Take something called A2J Author, which was mentioned in the sources. It's a powerful software tool used by legal aid groups.
Okay.
It allows a person with zero legal training to answer a series of simple, plain language questions, and then the system automatically generates a perfectly formatted, court-ready document for them. That kind of automation totally changes the cost structure of routine legal work.
What's so fascinating is that all of these innovations, the alternative fee arrangements, unbundling, and subscription models like prepaid legal service plans, they are all direct, market-driven responses to this affordability crisis the ABA identified. They shift the cost risk from the client to the provider.
The whole movement is away from the billable hour and toward models that maximize access, efficiency, and most importantly, cost predictability.
That brings us to a final necessary piece of information. If you're listening to this and you're recognizing that a subscription legal model, like legalShield, might be the proactive, predictable solution for your family or your business, we want to give you a clear way to learn more. To answer any questions or to determine if legalShield is right for them, their family, or their business, the listener should contact Chris Ward at 1.720.550.2320. Again, that's 1.720.550.2320, or you can just visit www.wardbusinesssolutions.com.
And the crucial takeaway here is that the deep-seated resistance to change that for so long defined the legal world is finally giving way to explicit client demands. The future of legal services is shifting fundamentally toward models that prioritize access, efficiency, and predictability.
So the system can finally serve that moderate income majority. And as we close out this deep dive, here's a final thought for the road. Given that the ABA found that people should have regular legal checkups, and that the cost of legal services is the #1 thing causing that apprehension, how might having a predictable, inexpensive monthly subscription fundamentally change not just how often you use a lawyer, but how you perceive risk and plan for certainty in your entire everyday financial life? Think about using a lawyer proactively, like a safety net, instead of reactively, like an ambulance.
That shift from fear to certainty is truly transformative.
For now, we'll leave it there. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.